Okay, so Kanye. Yay. The name itself, it always seems to stir things up, right?
Definitely. But this recent tweet, the one about his new album, Cousins,
Yeah.
it felt different. It landed, well, heavily.
Yeah, heavily is a good word.
Yeah.
It wasn't just buzz. It caused real shock, but also apparently a lot of pausing and thinking.
Right. And that's what we want to unpack today, how this, seemingly straightforward album announcement has really cracked open a much bigger, deeper conversation.
We're talking childhood trauma, guilt, his cousin's life sentence for murder. It's a lot.
It is. And our main source for this deep dive is an article from URBT News. They did a pretty thorough job covering the tweet, the controversy, the reactions.
Yeah, they got into the actual quotes from Ye, which are incredibly raw, as we'll see.
So the mission here, for everyone listening, isn't to get lost in the social media whirlwind.
No, definitely not. It's about trying to understand the heart of what Ye's saying, these really sensitive issues he's raising, and maybe why this one tweet hit such a nerve.
Exactly. So let's dive in. The URBT News piece talks about both outrage and reflection. What exactly did you say that sparked such a strong kind of dual reaction?
Well, okay, first off, he announces the song, Cousins. Straight up says it's about his cousin who's doing life for killing a pregnant woman.
Which is, startling enough on its own, a really heavy subject for a song title reveal.
For sure. But then he pivots, right? He goes into their childhood. He mentions finding dirty magazines, specifically ones they stopped looking at together.
And then he makes this distinction, doesn't he, between those magazines and others he found later in his mother's closet. Different from the Playboys he says they saw with his father earlier.
Yeah, that specific memory seems key. And then comes the part that, undeniably fueled the outrage URBT News mentioned.
The explicit statement.
Right. He writes, quote, "My name is Ye and I sucked my cousin's DK till I was 14. Very direct.
Extremely. And immediately following that admission, he links it back, expressing this potential feeling of responsibility for his cousin's crime later in life.
He says, "Perhaps in my self-centered mess, I felt it was my fault that I showed him those dirty magazines when he was 6, and then we acted out what we saw."
You can absolutely see why URBT News used the word outrage. It's deeply personal, potentially shocking, and raises immediate questions about, sharing something like that so publicly.
The platform is huge, the content is intensely sensitive, so yeah, outrage makes sense as an initial reaction.
But then there's the other side URBT News pointed to, reflection. It suggests that beyond the shock, something else is happening.
Exactly. It seems like this tweet, maybe because it was so raw, has kicked off a wider, maybe uncomfortable conversation nationally. People are grappling with it.
And he's drawing this line, or at least questioning this line, between these childhood experiences and these really tragic adult outcomes.
Yeah, and the URBT News article connects this to what experts sometimes talk about, right? The potential effects of early exposure to sexual content.
Right. Experts have looked into this for a long time. The article mentions potential links to things like behavioral issues, confusion, shame, potential long-term trauma.
It's complex, though, isn't it? The article is careful. It's not saying A causes B directly.
No, absolutely not. Psychology rarely works like that. It's always an interplay environment, genetics, individual choices. But Ye is putting a very human, very public face on these complex psychological discussions.
And his specific wording, that quote again, "Perhaps in my self-centered mess, I felt it was my fault." URBT News points out he's not explicitly blaming himself, is he?
No, it reads more like wrestling with it, a confrontation with the past, questioning his role, but not definitively saying, I caused this. It's a really fine line he's walking in that statement.
Yeah, it feels like a moment of deep, maybe painful personal reckoning being shared.
And that opens the door to the bigger themes the article brings up. Accountability, his own, maybe societal too, generational pain, which is a huge topic.
And just the lasting echo of things that happen when you're young. It ripples outwards.
Definitely. URBT News frames it as being about more than just Ye or his cousin. It touches on these wider societal issues, things we often don't talk about easily.
Like what specifically?
Well, the article mentions the silence that can surround childhood abuse or early sexual exposure, or even just generational trauma in families.
Right, and it specifically calls out how difficult these conversations can be within Black communities sometimes, where there might be more stigma around mental health.
Exactly. There can be these ingrained patterns of silence passed down, making it hard to bring these things into the open.
Which is where his platform comes in again. The article mentions, over 30 million followers?
Yeah, it's massive. So Whether you agree with how he did it or not, he's put this incredibly difficult subject in front of a huge audience, potentially reaching people who might never otherwise encounter these discussions.
And the proof is kind of in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
URBT News mentioned the spike in search terms.
Oh, yeah. Things like Kanye West cousin in jail, Kanye West cousin's song, meaning searches like that apparently shot up.
So people are trying to understand. They're curious, maybe confused, looking for context.
Which underlines the need for careful reporting like, well, what URBT News aimed to provide. They emphasize that this isn't just one man's pain on display.
It reflects what shared experiences, fractured families, that heavy weight of guilt people carry.
Precisely, and they make a key point. Ye isn't presented as excusing the horrific crime his cousin committed.
No, it's more like he's digging, asking really hard questions about where responsibility lies, maybe adult responsibility in protecting kids.
And about how those early experiences can shape or at least influence the path someone takes later in life. And crucially, the potential for healing if shame is addressed.
So bringing it together for listeners, this deep dive, based on that URBT News report, shows Ye's tweet about cousins really just detonated something.
Yeah, a really raw, uncomfortable, but maybe necessary dialogue about childhood trauma, its complex link to adult outcomes, and this immense burden of guilt he seems to be processing publicly.
And the URBT News Force makes it clear it's complicated. There are layers here. The public reaction is mixed, intense.
And it's forcing us to think about things often kept hidden. Shared pain, family secrets, accountability.
So maybe a final thought to leave people chewing on.
Yeah.
When a public figure shares something this personal, this potentially triggering on such a massive stage.
Yeah. What are the ripple effects? For them, for the millions seeing it, how does it change, or maybe could it change, how we talk about trauma, responsibility, even healing in our own lives, our own communities?
It definitely leaves you with a lot to consider.